My name is Jon Heintz. I'm the Executive Director of the Applied Technology Council in Redwood City. I'm a structural engineer, and we're a nonprofit organization created by engineers to develop engineering technologies for mitigating seismic hazards and other hazards across the United States. We were created by engineers because of the pace of technology. Engineers were worried about being able to incorporate the latest information coming out of universities into their practice. We were created as a nonprofit organization, and we receive federal funding from key agencies like the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And we have developed, over the course of our 40-year history, the premier engineering documents that form the basis of our building codes and much of our seismic retrofitting technologies. We consider ourselves an applied research organization doing problem-focused studies to create these solutions to engineering problems. For about 30 years, FEMA has had a National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program. They've been contributing to solving the problems of existing buildings and new construction over that time period. They have an existing buildings program that we've been the beneficiary of extended funding over those past 3 decades. FEMA has a program as part of their National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program. There are several agencies that participate in that, and they've had several initiatives and several consultants that work with them. They work with many people besides the Applied Technology Council. So we're just one avenue of FEMA's mitigation programs, and what we do is serve a specific area for FEMA, which is in their earthquake engineering area. I think one of the most important things we're working on right now is actually a CEA funded effort. It's CEA funded primarily, but it's also got FEMA support. And that is our development of a pre-standard for the seismic evaluation and retrofit of 1- and 2-family residential wood frame construction. So this is right in the core area of what CEA needs to do as part of their insurance and mitigation program. And what we're doing is using all of the technologies that we've developed to date to essentially pre-engineer and develop simple ways of retrofitting key deficiencies that exist in the regular housing stock in simple ways that people can apply without needing engineers. So as an engineer, that's a little bit of a double-edged sword for us, but there's actually appropriate uses for tools. Sometimes engineers are needed and sometimes engineers are not. And the key on this project is developing something that can be applied at scale and retrofit as many houses across the state as possible. One of the most important deficiencies that's often talked about is cripple wall and foundation bracing. And one of a common thing that happens in earthquakes is buildings that are not properly anchored to their foundations and are sitting up on cripple walls above their foundations, they slide off or fall over. And one of the primary purposes of this work is to develop techniques for how to properly size the amount of plywood and the number of bolts that need to go in to effectively reduce the potential for damage and make sure that the overall house performs better than it would have without any of such retrofitting. Houses that have horizontal wood siding, houses that are not sitting directly on the ground or not sitting directly on their foundations, so they're raised above the foundations. Houses that are on difficult sites that are not level, so steeply sloping sites, or houses that are on ground that's unstable or soft. All those houses experience extra risk as part of earthquake shaking, and so fixing these things can improve the ability of those houses to withstand that shaking and reduce the potential for damage in an earthquake. One of the very interesting things to me on this particular program is that not all houses are equal. So some houses are at more risk than others. Some houses could be safe. And the very interesting thing on this project that our new technologies have taught us is that simply adding in strengthening can help, but it can also hurt. And the important thing is to size that properly to make sure that you're improving the overall structure and not improving it so much that you force damage somewhere else. And a really key aspect of what we're doing here is making sure that we're doing the engineering behind the scenes to make sure that the retrofit is right-sized for the structure and can be applied in a way that doesn't require an engineering, but will improve the overall performance and not focus damage in areas that otherwise would not have been damaged before the strengthening was put in place. The obvious thing with cripple wall deficiency is you brace that cripple wall level. But the issue to worry about is if you brace that level and make it so strong, maybe the first story of the house can become damaged. So the important thing is to make sure that you balance everything and make sure that what you're doing is better for the overall system. Earthquakes in our region are a certainty. It really is not a question of if, it's a question of when. I live in this area, so I'm working in an area where I know there's a risk, and part of what I do is to make sure the world is better, not just for me, but for my children and for the rest of society. What we're doing on this project is doing the background technology development so that people can implement this strategy at scale without needing to do the complex engineering that it would otherwise take. We're taking very difficult engineering concepts that would normally require an engineer and trying to do the background engineering so that it can be simply applied and can have all the benefits without necessarily having to do all of the effort. This particular project is a very large project. There's a very large team of experts working on it. So the data that we are using to develop these solutions comes from earthquake engineering experience history, the experience of the large team that we have working. We hire specialists and experts in each area of the project that the project needs. But then here's the applied research portion of it. We actually have extensive analytical efforts that are going on. So the engineering and analysis, the data that we use to develop the solutions comes from, this is a 3-year project. It's a multi-year project. The data that we get to develop these solutions comes from the analysis and engineering that we've done over the last couple of years to develop these solutions.